Hello, my name is Emma, and I work from home as a web designer. Things have been going really well lately. I was lucky enough to inherit something respectable from my parents, which has given me stability in my finances. Lily, my best friend, is really strange. She spends a lot of time studying horoscopes and star charts and is very interested in astrology. I've never been one to really embrace it, but Lily is adamant about its impact. One day, excitedly waving some documents, Lily enters into my place. Emma, you really should look at this, she shouts. I ask her about her enthusiasm, feeling suspicious but curious at the same time. I've analyzed your natal chart and discovered your perfect match, she says. He goes by Matt, and he's reportedly your soul match, she says. Despite my skepticism, I agree to meet this purported perfect match, amused, with a wicked smile. Lily seals the bargain by offering to buy her a drink if things don't work out as planned. I approach Matt after Lily makes plans with a mix of curiosity and mistrust. To my astonishment, he doesn't look at all like the crazy person I had envisioned. He's tall, has dark hair, and a warm grin. He holds out his hand and says, "Hey, I'm Matt." I strike up a conversation, asking him if he is as passionate about astrology as Lily is. He shakes his head and laughs. Acknowledging that Lily's tenacity brought them together, we giggle together at our shared lack of faith in the magical arts. It becomes clear from our conversation that Matt and I have a wide range of interests. We have a lot in common, from our love of hiking to our taste in movies to our admiration for unusual cuisine pairings. I gradually begin to change my mind about my mistrust in astrology. Matt and I text back and forth for days after that. He inquires about my job, interests, and family, demonstrating a sincere curiosity in getting to know me. His genuine interest in my life and his friendly manner fuel our relationship's rapid growth. Matt holds my hand one evening after a nice supper at his apartment and says, "Emma, I know it's only been a few months," Matt says. "I feel an undeniable connection to you," his eyes unblinking. "I don't want to rush things, but I can't envision myself with anyone else." I get a flutter of emotions after hearing him speak. Matt, I have the same emotions. My pulse quickens with anticipation as I reply, "You're everything I never realized I was looking for." To Lily's joy, Matt and I formally tie the knot a few weeks later. She cries triumphantly, "I told you the stars don't lie." We talk about our future more often as our relationship grows. When Matt brings up the subject of us moving in together, it seems like the right move. We're contentedly joyful, and everything appears to be ideal for once. Matt convinces me that buying our house with my inheritance is a better investment than buying stocks. Once his $200,000 mortgage is paid off, we start renovating the house, including new paint and furniture. Our peace is broken as we get settled in our newly renovated house by an unexpected phone call. Matt listens closely and his look changes to one of concern. "Mom, what's going on?" The phone crackles with Matt's mother's desperate voice, and I can feel the tension in the room. We packed quickly and headed out. There is a lot of silence during the trip, and Matt's tight grasp on the wheel betrays his inner anguish. When we get to his parents' house, there's mayhem all around. His mother, Susan, is clearly upset and crying. Susan tears, her pain visible on her face. "Your father, he can't move or speak," she says. Seeing the agony in her eyes is awful. Following an exhausting hospital visit, it becomes clear how serious George's health is. His left side is paralyzed, and he is unable to speak. Making a strategy is a difficult task that awaits us back at his parents' place. I hesitantly say, "We should think about a care facility," as I know George would receive the best care there. "He wouldn't desire that." "No," Matt says, his resolve steadfast. "He wants to be at home." Susan changed her tone, her rage evident. "What about hiring a nurse?" Trying not to lose my temper, I proposed. However, Susan's answer was depressing. "We are unable to pay that," with a worried tone, she said. "We're running out of money." Matt looked right at me and begged me to figure out what to do. "Emma, we need to take action. Mom can't do this by herself," he begged. Sensing the seriousness of the issue, I proposed a hesitant fix. I can help out here for a while by staying here, I suggested, aware that it wasn't ideal but determined to make it work because I work from home after work the next day. Matt and I made George a cozy room downstairs so he wouldn't have to go up the stairs. Susan voiced her displeasure as she hovered nervously. "This bed is too small," she grumbled. "How is he supposed to be comfortable in this?" "Susan, this is all we have for now, my patience running thin," I promised her. "We'll find something better soon." George was finally comfortable, and even though he couldn't articulate it, I felt relieved as he slept. Matt had to come back to our city for work the following morning. The truth of the situation struck strongly when Matt was left alone with his parents. I got ready for the trials ahead, determined to help George and the family get well. Moving in with Matt's parents turned out to be a difficult endeavor. Susan was confined to her chair due to sciatica, so I took care of George and ran the house. I tried everything, but nothing seemed to satisfy her. She was often complaining, "This soup is too salty." One evening, "Susan, I'm working, trying to keep my cool," I said. "I need to keep my job to help with the expenses here." Still, her disdain persisted. She changed her tone and whispered, "It looks like you're just goofing off on that thing." I swallowed my annoyance and went back to see how George was doing, taking comfort in his quiet appreciation. I was determined to help him heal even though it was difficult to watch him in this position. I quietly remarked, "I'll give you a massage now, George," as I prepared the massage table. His sluggish blinks were a subdued sign that he understood. Since I had just finished a massage therapy course to help me better take care of him, I could feel his muscles twitching when I was massaging them. In the daily grind of balancing work and caring, made worse by Susan's constant whining in the background, it was a rare moment of solace. Susan's sciatica finally got better after months of this routine, so she decided to take a short vacation to see Matt. "I'm going to Matt's for a little bit, Emma." She relieved me of a huge load one morning when she said, "I need a break." I felt a sense of liberation come over me as she packed her bags, knowing that George and I would be alone and at last free from her never-ending criticism. I could feel the burden leave my shoulders the day Susan left, and George's face spoke volumes when I walked into his room. "Now it's just the two of us, George," I told him. "We're going to move forward." And he confirmed it with a slow blink. Susan's departure made life easier to handle. Creating a regimen, I started every morning by helping George with his exercises and gently encouraging mobility in his limbs. Then, using massage techniques I had learned from my most recent training, I relieved his muscle tension while encouraging him to face each day head-on. My concentration improved without Susan's constant criticism, and I was able to use my web design work as a haven. Spending a few hours every day being creatively lost. As we were getting ready for George's treatment one afternoon, I noticed something odd. His fingers quivered a little. "Hey, George, can you try moving your fingers?" Holding my breath, I asked. His fingers curled slowly, a tiny movement that, after weeks of inaction, represented a huge advancement. I was filled with excitement. "Well done, George," I told him to keep going, noticing a light of optimism in his eyes. We became much more dedicated after that day. Every twitch, every little action, turned into a victory. I increased the number of workouts and gradually pushed George beyond his comfort zone every day. George continued to make steady improvement with the weeks went by. Then one day, as they helped him stand, he took a stride forward with assistance. "George, look at you, you're moving." Grateful beyond measure, I cried out. George's confidence grew with each stride when we added a few steps to our regular walks, making our routines more rigorous. After one really fruitful session, George and I had a heart-to-heart. "George, you're really coming along. What is your overall feeling?" Sitting next to him, I questioned. He inhaled deeply and managed to say, "Better, thanks, Emma." Despite being brief, his remarks struck a deep chord with me, making me feel proud and moved. "George, you're welcome. We'll get through this as a team," I said, my voice choking in my throat. George's progress persisted over the coming months. He could now feed himself and move around the room with assistance. Our relationship grew stronger as we had short but deep talks. "You really are a fighter, George, I am so proud of you. I said to you one morning when we were enjoying the peace and quiet of the garden, I couldn't accomplish it without your help, he answered, sounding more certain than before. I was overcome with appreciation when I saw George regaining lost parts of his life. His spirit was strong and his desire unyielding. When our relationship grew stronger, he started calling me his daughter, which made me feel warm inside. I worked up the guts to address a subject that had been bothering me as we sat in the yard one beautiful day, enjoying the sunshine. George, why did you resist the idea of going to a nursing home when you fell ill? Gently, I met his gaze and asked. He seemed surprised. I never refused, he said, taking his time. I was saving money for a suitable place. I was surprised by his words. However, Susan said otherwise. I insisted. She said you didn't wish to go, and there wasn't enough money. George became serious in his expression. He stammered, but managed to get out I wasn't aware. We could have worked it out. A few months later, I made the decision to pay Matt a surprise visit, as I quickly said goodbye to George and packed my bags. I was thrilled with anticipation. The trip appeared to take longer than usual because all I could think about was our reunion. By the time we reached our driveway, it was dark outside. I went to the front door with my things in hand, but something didn't feel right. The lock wouldn't fit my key. I tried again, but to no avail, and confusion set in. I pressed the doorbell in the hopes that Matt would respond. Rather, a stranger with a perplexed expression opened the door. She asked, "Can I help you?" I felt a knot in my stomach. Matt's wife, Emma, here, this is my home. Who are you? With a hint of disbelief, I answered. My name is Karen. It was sold a few months ago, this residence. My role is simply to supervise it. She empathetically clarified. My thoughts raced. Sold, that isn't feasible. I live here. The shock was not much lessened by her apology. I was so desperate that I trembled while I reached for my phone, every time I dialed Matt's number. It seemed like an eternity. Hey, Emma, what's up? He had a strangely composed voice. I'm at our house, Matt, and a woman tells me it's sold. What in the world is happening? With a trembling voice, I demanded. His response had a hint of coldness to it. Indeed, I did sell the house, for Mom and myself. I purchased a new one. I was boiling with bewilderment and anger. You did not notify me when you sold our house. Where should I go? Exactly, I yelled, my feelings unfiltered. Emma, you have no place in the new house. I filed the divorce decree. Did you not receive them? His voice grew cold. My entire world fell apart. Documents related to a divorce. Matt, are you for real? I settled your dreadful mortgage. How could you subject me to this? His vile laugh pierced me. None of that can be proven by you. My name was on the house, Emma. It's over. Proceed. I began to cry as I struggled to understand his treachery. How is your dad doing? Who is looking after him? I begged. I no longer have a problem with Dad. He shouldn't be bringing Mom and me down. Take him if you want to play nurse, Matt said. I don't care, in a tone rife with contempt, and hung up. I was completely bewildered as I stood in the parking lot of my former house, darkness surrounding me. I was astounded by Matt's callousness. Without a second thought, how could he serve me with divorce papers, sell our house, and leave his father behind? The buzzer on my phone startled me out of my reverie. Emma, please return, need to discuss. Begged George in a frail but anxious voice. George, I'll be there, I said in a shaky voice. I'll be there soon. I was so tired that I got into my car and drove through the night, feeling confused, angry, and depressed. It was early in the morning when I got to George's apartment, and I was emotionally spent. George was there waiting for me when I entered the room, his worried expression on his face, with tears welling up in my eyes. I mumbled, George, I don't know what to do. I sobbed on his shoulder, no longer able to control my feelings. He led me gently to the living room and assisted me in getting comfortable. Tell me what happened, he asked, his gentle gaze shining through. I took a long breath to gather myself and told him about the experience. George, Matt sold the house. He said that neither he nor I had a place here and that he doesn't care about you. I received divorce papers from him. George's normally kind face became rarefied with rage. He muttered. I knew they were up to no good. What do you mean? I questioned, blotting my tears. I was unable to speak following my stroke. They spoke in front of me, George said, his voice quivering from exertion. Everything was planned by them. Told me they would sell the house, take your money, and throw you out. His eyes glowed with pain as he said, they did say that. How were they able to be so cruel? It seemed impossible for me to comprehend. But I managed to. George's voice loudened. They also wanted to get rid of me, sell my house. I listened in horror as tears fell down my face. I can't believe they do this to their own family, I said quietly. George inhaled deeply. I've taken care of everything. What do you mean? Confused, I asked. He took a pair of keys out of his pocket and gave them to me. I purchased Matt's home. You now own it. I was overcome with emotion when I looked at the keys in shock and then back at George. You completed this for me. Why not? Since you merit it. It was your money, not theirs, he stated firmly. My eyes welled up with happy and relieved tears. George, thank you. I'm at a loss for words. My heart was full with gratitude and resolve when I took possession of the keys to my new house. Since George had given me another chance, I was resolved not to let Matt's and Susan's deceit destroy me. We would fight back together, and we would prevail. George thought it was time to formally announce things the following day, to amend his will. He summoned a lawyer to the residence. With a determined expression, George added, Emma, I need you to be the heir. George, are you sure? I inquired, with a mixture of thanks and worry. Indeed, it is correct. You looked after me, not them, he answered, his voice unwavering in spite of his illness. We took a seat at the kitchen table once the attorney came. After George gave his wishes, the attorney nodded and started writing the new will. As George signed the documents, leaving me as the only successor to all of his belongings, I felt a knot form in my throat. I visited with Jack once more a few days later, this time armed with all the paperwork and proof we had collected. Jack expressed his admiration for our level of preparation. Emma, this is very good. We are fully equipped to pursue Matt and Susan, he declared with assurance. Jack, I'm prepared to fight, I said. Let's get that $200,000 back. With a renewed sense of resolve, Jack started the case, requesting my money back. We also included bank witnesses attesting to the money transfer as proof. I was optimistic about our chances since it was a compelling argument. My door was knocked on a few days later. When I opened it, Matt and Susan were standing there, appearing very frightened. With a trembling voice, Matt replied, Emma, we need to talk. I glared at them while crossing my arms. What is it that you want, Emma? Please accept our apologies. We never intended for things to get to this point, Susan remarked in a shaky voice. I apologize. This was always intended by the two of you. I shot back, feeling my anger building. You lied, stole my money, and tried to kick me out, I said. Please, let's figure something out, Emma. We want to avoid going to court, Matt begged. His expression pallid. I shook my head, sounding cold in the process. I don't want to hang out with folks who are similar to you. By the way, George has moved all of his assets to me and is totally recovered. Nothing remains for the two of you. Susan's eyes expanded in shock and Matt's skin turned pale. Right there on my porch, she passed out. Matt was speechless and stood still. Matt, get her out of here. I pointed to their automobile and said, I don't have time for your theatrics. He nodded, still shocked, and accompanied Susan to the car. I had a strange feeling of closure as they drove away. A few weeks later, I won the case in trial. The $200,000 was awarded to me, and the divorce was formally consummated. Though it had been a difficult fight, justice was served. I felt lighter than I have in months when I drove back to George's place with a weight off my shoulders. George looked up at me when I walked in, his eyes shining with eagerness. He said, How did it go, George? We prevailed. I've got the money back. And the divorce is finalized, I answered, shedding tears of relief. The weight of the previous few months vanished as we sat together in the living room. It was the start of a new chapter in which contentment and serenity were at last within grasp. After the commotion, life returned to a peaceful rhythm. I was living in my own house now, and George was my life, like the father I hardly remembered. We spent our days taking care of the garden, sharing memories of the past, and just enjoying each other's company. It was a chapter of peace and happiness, a far cry from the mayhem that had overwhelmed us before. Basking in the stillness after the storm was a relief. I was enjoying my coffee on the balcony one Sunday afternoon when my phone rang. I had met Matt through my friend Lily, an astrologer. "Hi Emma, you won't believe what I discovered this time around in your chart." Excitation surged up in Lily's voice. I laughed, already figuring out where this was going to go. "Oh boy, what is it now, Lily?" "A new love is on the road for you. He's even better than the prior one. He's ideal for you. The stars are true," she exclaimed, almost squealing with happiness. I shook my head and started giggling. "Lily, after everything that happened, I think I've had my fill of horoscope-based romances, but this one's different, Emma. Everything is perfectly aligned." "You must have faith in me," she said. "Thank you, Lily. But right now I'm concentrating on myself," I answered, more amused than annoyed. "If Mr. Perfect is out there, he'll find me without the star's assistance." I couldn't help but laugh at the chat when I hung up. In spite of everything, Lily had contagious excitement. However, I was aware that I wasn't in a rush to try anything new. I was happy with my life at the time. Curious, George wheeled himself onto the porch. "Who was that?" "Lily," I responded, rolling my eyes. "She's trying to set me up with another perfect match from the stars." George laughed and his eyes gleamed. "Stars didn't work so well last time, did they?" "Exactly." I informed her that I'm over horoscope dates. I smiled and said, "I've got enough on my plate without bringing another guy into the mix." With a knowing glance in my direction, George replied, "You'll find someone when the time is right." I felt incredibly content as I gazed out at our garden. The vegetables were growing wonderfully, and the flowers were in full bloom. We had built a small paradise there together. Taking a great breath of the fresh air, I added, "You know, George, this is all I need right now. A simple life, good company, and a bit of sunshine. A perfect life." He grinned and nodded. A few days later, Lily called me again, but this time it was just to catch up like old friends, with no horoscope readings or matchmaking. It was nice to keep things simple and light. I wondered about the future. One evening when I was watering the garden, I had faith that one day I would find someone who would accept me for who I am, without the help of the stars to confirm our destiny. After watching the first story above, do you have any thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, let's watch another similar story. It's Kimberly's story. I went to the local high school in my little town, where I met Jason by happenstance. Jason was a tall, charming man who held people's attention with ease. Even though we were only teenagers, our relationship felt destined from the beginning. Our relationship took off quickly, and at the young age of 20, we got married. Looking back, it was a wonderful fairy tale at the time, but maybe we were too young and inexperienced. Jason embodied the carefree, joyful spirit. He had a huge personality and lofty aspirations. Conversely, my inclination was towards security and a stable future. I thought we found a balance together. We had just exchanged vows when we received the happy news that Lily would soon be joining us. Jason was overjoyed, and for a while we were happy, envisioning ourselves as a small family, but fractures quickly showed. Jason's easygoing style drifted toward recklessness, when he was always chasing flimsy hopes and ambitions while I struggled to keep things stable, especially for Lily. Even though he loved our kid, he frequently gave the impression that parenting wasn't his top priority and that his personal travels were. One night, when I sat down with Jason in our living room after putting Lily to bed, I prepared myself for the talk I'd been avoiding, the one concerning his spending patterns and lack of concentration. "Jason, we need to talk," I said, trying not to laugh at the anxiety building within of me. "What's up, Kimberly?" With his eyes still glued to the TV, he answered. I said to myself, I'm worried about how we're handling things, particularly now that Lily is in the image. We must use greater caution." Jason dismissed my concerns with a shake of his head. "You obsess over the future all the time. Why are we unable to simply savor the moment? The present is a mess." "Jason," my rage was getting out of control, "we're barely scraping by, and you keep splurging on gadgets and talking about trips we can't afford." A few weeks later, following another vehement fight over a rash buy, I painfully decided to call it quits on our marriage. Although I knew it was essential for Lily and me, it wasn't an easy task. I wanted her life to be stable, not full of ups and downs and broken promises. The weeks that followed were difficult as Jason moved out and I started the divorce process. He eventually consented to shared custody and paying child support, though he wasn't happy about it. Although it wasn't the life I had planned, as I negotiated the challenges of being a single mother. A wave of relief came over me. Being Lily's only parent was challenging but incredibly rewarding. She became my compass, and I was committed to giving her the finest life could provide. We gradually adapted to our new routine once I was able to secure a job that would allow me to support us. I learned to live with Jason in a civilized way over time. He occasionally went to see Lily, and I was grateful that he paid his child support on time. Although it wasn't the life of a fairy tale that we had envisioned, it was nonetheless functional for us. I was bursting with joy as Lily turned 18 and got accepted to law school. She put in a lot of work, and her accomplishments were proof of her tenacity and willpower. I invited Lily's father Jason to join us for a special meal to celebrate the event, something I hadn't done in a long time. He accepted the invitation with a sincere warmth in his voice when I called him. I tried to start out in a light-hearted manner. "Hey, Jason, it's Kimberly. I'm preparing Lily's supper. I felt it would be wonderful if you came after she was accepted to law school." "Kimberly, that's wonderful to hear." We hung up when he said, "I'll be there." I was a ball of anxiety the night of the dinner, wanting everything to be just so for Lily. I painstakingly laid the table and made her favorite meals. Jason appeared looking unexpectedly well, wearing slacks and a clean shirt, and carrying a modest gift. When Lily spotted her father, her expression brightened. "You made it, Dad." He hugged her and said, "Of course, I wouldn't miss it for the world." Lily was overjoyed when he gave her the gift, a brand new smartphone, and expressed her gratitude. Conversation flowed easily when we sat down to dinner. Jason, who seemed to be doing well, gave updates on his new work and his roomy home. "It was impossible for me not to feel happy for Lily," Jason said to me across the table. "So, Kimberly, you haven't changed a bit." I forced a stuttering smile. "Many thanks, Jason. It looks like you're doing fine." "Yes, everything are going well. Got a fantastic job and a good home. I'm having a good time in life," he answered, sounding a little proud. Lily made an announcement about her plans to celebrate with her pals after supper. "Thank you, Mom and Dad, for the dinner. The phone is fantastic." She gave us both embraces and added, "I'll see you both later." Before hurriedly leaving the room, the home felt disturbingly silent suddenly, all by itself. Jason got up to help as we started clearing the table, and we quickly established a rhythm of quiet cooperation. We were flooded with memories of our time together as we went through the same routine of washing and drying dishes. Jason finally broke the quiet, speaking in a solemn and reflective tone. "I've been thinking a lot lately, Kimberly," he admitted, staring at the dishes. "About us, about Lily, about everything." "Really, about what?" I asked, not daring to look up as I carried on with my duties. "Regarding what we possessed." "Concerning you, I miss everything," he said, putting down the plate he had been drying. "You are missed. I'd like to give it another go." I inhaled deeply as a range of feelings passed through me. "Jason, our past is not easy to understand. It's not all positive." "Why right now?" "Because I've come to terms with what I lost. For you and Lily, I want to be a better man," he said, his sincerity resonating in his voice. I paused, memories and worries about the future racing through my head. "All right, Jason, let's move slowly, watch the trajectory of it." A grin appeared on his face. "I'm grateful, Kimberly, you'll be glad you did this. When we washed the dishes, we relaxed and lost in our own thoughts in a comfortable silence. It seemed bizarre to feel excited about starting over, at the same time. We chatted more into the night, remembering and laughing about the good old days. Reuniting with Jason was a big decision, but I decided to seize the opportunity for a new beginning. Margaret, the sister of Jason and Lily, was the lone guest in our modest ceremony held at the municipal hall when we remarried. It was not an elaborate event, it was a humble one. This time, I hoped, things would be different. At first, moving into Jason's large home felt strange because it was so different from my small home. However, Jason appeared really happy to have me there, and everything seemed good for a little. I occupied myself with the decor, attempting to create a homey atmosphere, and a few days later, when Lily paid us a visit, her happiness at being with us again was evident. We gathered in the living room and talked about her college experiences. Swapping updates. "How's law school treating you?" Jason asked. Flashing a proud smile, "I'm enjoying every minute of it, even though it's challenging," Lily answered with a glint in her eyes. "I'm learning so much." "It's amazing to hear that, little one," Jason reassured her, patting her shoulder. "You're going to be a great lawyer." "Many thanks, Dad. It's wonderful to see you two here once more." Lily grinned at us. Jason and I chatted about our future plans on the couch after Lily left. We spoke of going somewhere, maybe even up to the mountains. To be planning things together again felt comforting, but as time went on, I realized Jason wasn't making the same financial contributions to our joint account. Over dinner one evening, I brought up the topic. "Jason, it appears that you have not been adding funds to our account. What is happening?" I asked, trying not to show off too much emotion. He looked up from his plate, looking a little irritated. "Kimberly, I've experienced some financial hardships. I'm putting effort into it." Financial difficulties. This was not something you had previously mentioned. "What's taking place?" I pressed, a tinge of discomfort. "I didn't want to cause you concern." He looked away and said, "It's nothing major, just a few things I need to sort out." With the months went by, I saw Jason splurging on new technology and showing off his expensive purchases on social media. I felt bad about it, but I was afraid to confront him in the hopes that he would change his spending patterns. One day, when I was cleaning the house, I found a receipt in Jason's jacket pocket for a rental automobile of exceptional quality. My heart fell, and I made the decision to deal with it that night. "Jason, can we talk?" As soon as he walked into the room, I remarked and held out the receipt. "What's this?" "Kimberly, it's simply a rental, not a huge deal," he said. "Not that big of a deal, Jason. We should be saving money, not blowing it on luxuries," I said, a hint of annoyance in my voice. "Kimberly, I work really hard. I am entitled to relish my earnings," he shot back, sounding off. "I know that, but let's exercise responsibility." Trying not to lose my cool, I reminded him that we had bills to pay. "I'm in control of it." He dismissed my worries, saying, "You don't need to worry." Days passed, and Jason's wasteful spending persisted in spite of our conversations. I tried to convince Jason of the value of budgeting effectively and saving money for 2 years, but my attempts were met with resistance. He dismissed me every time I brought up the topic, acting as though he had everything under control. The truth, though, was very different. His constant buying of expensive cars and new devices left our bank account always on the verge of collapse. Jason put up a show of wealth on social media, posting videos of himself showing off his new purchases and making our friends think we were enjoying the good life. They had no idea that, behind the surface, I was fighting to maintain our financial stability while dealing with his reckless spending. His indulgences continued to rise with the months went by, and our combined account was barely enough to pay for necessities. I finally made the decision to address him directly because I was tired of the act. I said, "Jason, we need to talk," as I went into the living room where he was relaxing with his iPad. "Could it please wait, Kimberly?" He shot back, not even bothering to look up. "I'm busy." "It cannot." "That is true, this is crucial," I said, maintaining a firm tone throughout. I discovered another receipt for a high-end vehicle hire. This can't be how we go on. You keep spending as if we are billionaires, but we are barely making ends meet and running out of money. Kimberly, I work really hard. Feeling visibly irritated, he shot out. I deserve to treat myself. It's one thing to treat yourself, but this is going too far. We're drowning here, I shot back, growing increasingly irritated. Stop making things seem so dramatic. We're all right. I don't need to worry about it, he said, dismissing my worries. You don't, Jason. I lost patience and yelled. You're acting like a spoiled child, not a responsible adult. With a scowl, he got to his feet. Kimberly, I don't need you to lecture me. I was furious as he stormed out of the room, saying, I know what I'm doing. I couldn't live this way. Change was needed. Despite my hopes that Jason would change and become more responsible, the issue worsened each month. As more receipts for gadgets and expensive rentals appeared, I felt overwhelmed trying to keep our finances afloat while he spent wildly, seemingly oblivious to the implications. It was like our first breakup. The man I had believed would develop and prioritize our future was still careless and put the moment before the repercussions. One day, my brother called to tell me our mother had died. She lived in Lily's city of study. The news hit me hard. Jason and I decided to board the train to say goodbye. After hearing the news, grief and meditation dominated my lengthy, solitary trek. Lily welcomed us with a pale face and teary eyes. We hugged tightly, taking comfort in each other. The goodbye was easy, like our mother wanted. My brother and I made the required arrangements without fuss to honor her. I noticed Jason was missing during the service. I felt worried and frustrated because he always disappeared when I needed him. I ignored those feelings to say goodbye to my mother. Jason contacted me after the ceremony. I avoided asking Jason about his absence since I was exhausted from the day's emotions. We read the will at my mother's house after the funeral. My brother Tom, Lily, Jason, and some close relatives joined me. A lump developed in my throat as Mr. Harris, a longtime family friend and lawyer, opened the envelope and read aloud. He said, to my daughter Kimberly, I leave the house and all its contents. As his words hit home, the house, full of my mother's memories, seemed heavy. It was also comforting. Her presence stayed. Looking at Tom, who seemed to accept the arrangement without resistance, I felt grateful and nervous. Jason's sudden outburst ruined the moment. We must sell the house. Kimberly can't manage it alone. He spoke authoritatively. Staring at him, I was amazed. What are you talking about, Jason? Just heard the will. The house is mine. Exactly. We should sell your house and split the proceeds, he insisted, frustrated. No way, Dad. Lily said stubbornly, I lived here with Grandma in college. I'll stay here. Jason waved her off. It's between grown-ups. Lily, we must be practical. Kimberly, practical. You're selling my mother's house like a commodity. I raged. It is an asset, Kimberly, and as your husband, I have a say in what happens with it. Jason defiantly crossed his arms. Lily rose, her eyes ablaze. Dad, remember I'm studying law. Spouses don't share inherited property. You have no say. Jason's rage made him blush. Young lady, don't talk to me like that. A family decision, and I'm part of it. He then presented me with an ultimatum. If you don't sell the house, I'll divorce you. When everyone looked at us, the room fell silent as tension rose. I could see our relatives were shocked and confused by the sudden familial upheaval. Walking back, I was filled with fury and betrayal. Fine, Jason, I said, coldly, we'll discuss this when we get home. We left quickly the next morning on the train home. Jason stayed silent during the trip, his wrath simmering, to kill time. I browsed social media on my phone. I found Jason's video then. He stood before an elaborate funeral arrangement, pretending emotion for the camera, describing his supposed closeness to my mother. Comments were filled with sympathy, and views exceeded 1 million. He hadn't attended my mother's funeral. Instead, he had been at another service across the cemetery, blatantly filming himself against a wealthy businessman's coffin. I was furious and disbelieving. I spoke contemptuously to him without looking away. Jason, you're in for a rude awakening when we return." He smiled smugly. "Ah, so you've decided to sell," he said, calculating profits. "We'll profit greatly. A new automobile is on my mind." I silently shook my head in disappointment, angry and disillusioned. The journey continued. Jason was surprised to find his older sister Margaret at the dining table when we arrived. Knowing our chat would be serious, I had her arrive ahead. Jason's demeanor changed when he saw her. "Margaret, what's going on?" he muttered, fearful. Margaret said sternly, "Kimberly invited me." "Jason, we must talk." Anxiety replaced his assurance as he sat down. I saw terror in his eyes as we talked, knowing his duplicity had caught up with him. Taking a big breath, I faced everything. "Margaret, I need to fill you in on what's been happening," I said steadily. "Jason has been overspending on electronics and automobile rentals. He's making me sell my mother's house and threatening divorce if I don't." Margaret focused on Jason. "Is this true, Jason?" He avoided meeting her eyes. "It's not as serious as she's making it out to be, Margaret," he said. "Not as serious," interjected aggressively. "You've wasted money and tried to force me to sell my mother's house. That's serious, Jason." Margaret shook her head, disappointed. "Jason, you've failed to mature. Your childish behavior persists. You've accomplished nothing alone." Jason's face alternated between wrath and humiliation. "That's unfair, Margaret. I did my best." "Your best?" Margaret sneered. "You live in someone else's house. I let you stay out of pity, but now I see you're wasting money and bullying Kimberly. You haven't paid Lily's child support. You couldn't even care for your daughter. You should appreciate Kimberly but don't deserve her." Margaret's remarks hurt, and I almost cried. My voice trembled when I spoke to Jason. "Jason, Lily now owns the house." Groan. "It's her legacy," Jason burst out, furious. "I don't care about Lily. I want half the house sale proceeds or a divorce." Heavy stillness fell over the room. I took a deep breath to stay calm. "You don't love your daughter, okay, Jason?" My hand trembled as I handed him the divorce papers I had packed from my suitcase. "Here are the divorce papers. Sign them." Jason grudgingly signed with shaking hands. "You're making a huge mistake, Kimberly," he grumbled. "No, Jason," I responded. "The mistake was thinking you'd ever change." Jason hurriedly completed the signature and slammed the door, which strangely relieved me. As I stood there, free and drained, Margaret came up and rested her hand on my shoulder. "Kimberly, my brother is much obliged to you for all that you have done. In Lily's company, you will get through the divorce." My mother took me in after I returned to my hometown. When I reminisced about old times, I felt at home, though it needed some work. The house was a welcome place to start fresh. Lily recently graduated from college, tied the knot with a wonderful man, and is now expecting a baby. I will soon be a grandma. The first time in what felt like forever. My life was peaceful. An afternoon of peaceful gardening was disrupted when my phone rang. I felt a knot in my gut when I saw Jason's name on the screen. I managed to say, "Hello," while attempting to regulate my emotions. "Please, Kimberly, I must speak with you," Jason implored. "Help. I'm in a jam. My debt is growing, and I'm depending on you for help." "No, Jason," I declared. "I will not part with any cash. I really need you, Kimberly." Again, he pleaded with God to make things right. I was taken aback by his absurd proposal. "Can we start over?" Getting hitched again. "So insane. Are you?" "We also had a good time, Kimberly. A new beginning is possible." He kept trying to convince me. "No way, Jason. We've finished. You ought to have moved on by now. I'll never marry you again or give you money," I declared, my anger evident. He let out a deep breath. "You weren't supposed to get it. I was hoping you could lend me a hand. I've done enough to aid Jason. You have to be strong for yourself," I said. "All right, Kimberly, I get it," he murmured with a chill. After saying, "Goodbye, Jason," I ended the phone. Both relieved and saddened, I stood there. Closing that chapter gave me a sense of liberation. Relief washed over me as soon as Jason's problems subsided, as I tended to my garden. My serenity returned, my daughter and soon-to-be grandson required my whole attention. The past was too much for me to handle. I wanted to welcome the limitless opportunities that lay ahead. After watching the stories above, do you have any thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. If you enjoyed our video, please like, subscribe, and share our channel. That's all about today's stories. See you next time.